Hey everyone, it's Darren. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about using Excel's formatting features, cell formatting specifically. Now, you can do a lot with different cell formatting, and you've probably seen, the bold and the italics and the font size and the left and right justifying everything. And that's what most people work with when they think of formatting. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're actually talking about the formatting that you can do to change the way that the contents of the cell actually appear. And we're going to start with some numbers here. So here we have some basic numbers, um, and we're going to go into format cells. And now these are general now, I hope. And that's the by default everything starts as general. In general, Excel kind of makes its best guess about what the format is, whether it's a number or a time. Uh, it won't stick any extra leading zeros on. It won't stick any extra trailing zeros on. It uses the default formats. And that mostly works, but not always. So if we can go into here into format, and we can pick different things. Like let's pick number. And this is on the number tab. All of your other formatting is over here that people normally think about. I'm going to the number tab and I want to put a comma in there and I want it to two decimal places. And now if I have 1,000 or more, I get a comma and I only have two decimal places regardless of the value. It would round that if it needed to round. So this is a useful thing if you're working with money, if you really only care about, up to a tenth of a meter or something like that. That's the way you do that. Well, what other formats do we have? Currency. Currency is a big one. You can pick whatever symbol you need here. So I'm in the US, so dollar is obviously the default. I then come down here and I can pick the euro if I want. And now it's going to display currency with euro. Um, with with money, I can also pick four different formats for negative numbers. Now these are used mostly by accountants. Normal people, like anyone that's not an accountant, typically just puts a negative sign in front of a negative number, and that typically works. Uh, if you're doing financial reports, you may want to put red for negative numbers. You may want to put it in parentheses for negative numbers. You may want red and parentheses for negative numbers. Here's where you can pick that under currency. And I didn't have any negative numbers here, but now this is displayed in euros. Now, it also gives me two decimal places on it. I could change that, of course. Over a number, I could have also done the same thing with negative numbers to change the way they display. Now, I mentioned that the accountants are the ones that use the funny numbering system, and accountants use another funny numbering system, and that is that they separate the dollars or the dollar sign out, and it looks like this. And those also have obviously to a controlled number of digits. Okay. What else can we do here? Well, we'll skip date and time for a moment. Let's jump onto percentage. And percentage, I can pick, again, I can pick number of spots that I want for percentage. Uh, so I don't always have to pick two. So percentage, remember, one is 100%. Two is 200%. So this was 0.01. So it displays the percentage with however many decimal spots, decimal places you want. Fraction. Fraction is a really cool one you can do. Uh, Now, again, you're going to be looking at estimates here. It's going to be an approximation. Uh, and you're not going to know if it's rounded or not, but that's usually okay. So you can tell it to do up to one digit. Well, I have to pick the whole column and pick format cells, fraction, up to one digit. And my whole numbers here come out this way. Now these were, even this one was zero point 0.1. So to one digit, that's 1/10. So it's going to round down. But these ones down here, this was 0.25, 0.33, zero point 0.5. So these all go to a basic fraction. It can be really useful if that's the way you're used to looking at numbers, if that's kind of what you want to look at. But you can do more with fraction. Let's take a look at that again. You can go into, 2 or 3 digits here, and it'll pick some weird numbers sometimes for your fractions. It's going to do the best it can. Uh, Here, my numbers sort of made sense. That one here that's not showing at all, I just have to make the column a little wider. So again, these ones down here, those ones were pretty straightforward. These ones up here, now I've got a couple more available. Let's go in and look at one more thing with fractions. You can actually specify it as halves, quarters, eighths, sixteenths, tenths, hundredths. Um, Now, why are you going to want to look at halves, quarters, eighths, and sixteenths? Well, if you think about cooking, you need a eighth of a teaspoon of something. You need a quarter cup of something. So that makes sense. If you're doing construction, a lot of construction measurements are broken down that way as well. So we can do sixteenths, and you see this is in 2/16. It would have been a quarter otherwise. Or excuse me, it would have been an eighth, and that was zero point 0.1, but it rounds to the nearest 16th is 2/16. So that's using fractions. Sometimes useful, sometimes not. It's there if you want it. Again, remember, it's going to round. There's no way to get a remainder out of it. So if you don't want it to round, don't use fractions. Okay, let's look at scientific notation. Scientific notation is one that most people will never actually use. And if we go into here, we get there the same way. Go to scientific notation, you control the number of decimal places you want. And what scientific notation does is it lets you represent either really, really, really big numbers or really, really, really small numbers. Uh, it's not so useful for representing 10 or 15 or whatever. You can, but not really so useful. So if we look at this one, 1.0000 e plus 00, that's 1. Um, if you look at the first part of the number, before the e, that is the number you start with. And then the part after the e, if you have a negative sign, you move the decimal point to the left. If it's a positive, you move the decimal point to the right. So if we come down here, we have 1.0000 e plus 02. That tells me I have 1, and then I want to move the decimal point 2 positions to the right. So that would be 100.00. So that's 100. Um, don't worry about it if this doesn't make sense. If it makes no sense to you right now, it probably means you simply don't ever need to use it. Uh, Occasionally, you might see something like this show up as a number if it's something really weird in your spreadsheet. Often that's an error, but if you see it, that's all that's going on. Is it's just either a really huge number or a really tiny number. Okay, let's look at what other formats we have here. Let's look at the text, the date and times next. Okay, so if you've seen my date and time videos, you know that dates and times are numbers. Dates are the number of days since, so starting January 1st of 1900. There are no dates before January 1st, 1900, as far as Excel knows. So that's the integer part. Times are fractions of that. So if you can have a date and a time stored in the same value, which is why you can have something like 11:35 a.m. on February 17th, uh, and that makes sense because the whole number part is the date and the decimal part is the time. So we can change some time format, time and date format. So if we look at the date here, this is the default format for the United States. If you are in a different country that uses a different date format, your default will be different. So if we come into format cells and we pick date, you'll see that a couple of these have an asterisk on them. And that says that those formats specifically are going to be controlled by regional settings. And that's the regional setting on your computer. So I can change this if I want to go from that format. I want to display the day on it. I can do that. And nice, I have the day and the month is typed out. And you see December 31st, 1850 did not change. And the reason it didn't change is it's older than January 1st, 1900. That looks like a looks like it should be a date, acts like it should be a date, except it will not calculate as a date. What other date formats do we have here? So we can look, you can change to, just month and date. You can do a two-digit year if you like. You can do a two-digit year, and you can do with or without the leading zeros. If you want to put leading zeros on there, you get the leading zeros on the months and the days. You may want it, you may not want it. You've got other formats down here you can get to. So pretty much pick whatever date format works for you. If you're sending stuff internationally, you might want to change that date format. If you send something from the US to England, in England, for example, they flip the month and the date in short date format. So if you had January 3rd, they would see that as potentially March 1st. So there's some ambiguity there. Uh, if you flip it, there may still be ambiguity because they're used to seeing stuff from the States. So you might want to put the months spelled out. Okay, what about time formats? Time formats are also regional formats. So if we come in here to time, you see this one is set to the regional format for the region you're currently in. Again, I'm in the United States. This is the default format. You can do 24-hour time if you like, and you see that will change it. And I guess the only one I had changed here was midnight there. You can do 24-hour time with seconds. You can do elapsed time. Elapsed time is really useful if you are uh, not so much time of day, but time it takes to complete a process, runner's times, that sort of thing. Uh, can do elapsed time. This one is just minutes, seconds, and tenths of seconds. Here you have elapsed time in hours, minutes, and seconds. Uh, the nice thing about the elapsed time in hours, minutes, and seconds, again, not useful if you're looking at time of day. If, on the other hand, you are looking at something more like um, the time it takes to produce 100 things in the factory, uh, it might take more than 24 hours. So you might need something like that. So those are the time functions. There are some special formats that can be used. And let's take a look at what those special formats are here. Uh, so if we look at special, sorry, I keep sliding over. If we look in the special column, we have zip code. Okay, this is, in this case, US zip code. If you change the location, you can get other things. So zip code, in the US, a zip code is a 5-digit number. And if you format something as zip code, it'll add leading zeros. If without working with this, if you've ever tried to print mailing labels, for example, you know that you wind up padding zeros on there and stuff, and it can be kind of a pain, or just go in and format it as a zip code. You also have zip plus 4. This is a newer version of a zip code, and it has your old 5-digit zip code with leading zeros if needed, and then that's followed by a 4-digit number. Okay, what else do we have? I think we have telephone numbers here. Again, these are regional. In the US, the telephone number is a three-digit area code, typically in parentheses, followed by a three-digit, what used to be a city code, but now most of the cities have a lot of those, and then a four-digit number. So that's how they are formatted. And in the US, another number that we have to type a lot is Social Security numbers. And Social Security numbers also have a specific format, and that is three digits dash two digits dash four digits. So if you're working with these numbers, you can actually put these in and it'll make sense and it'll be easy and stuff will work for you well. So those are the special formats. Now, you may have noticed that I skipped one here, which was the text format. Um, let's see the text format over here. And text format causes errors. There's no way around it. Um, I have a video that I was recording a couple days ago and had a text format in it. And when I use text formats, for example, for these videos, if I put a equation across the top line, if I put equations up there and then copy the equations down to show you what those equations do, I use text formats on the top so that it doesn't actually calculate the equation. The problem is if you have something calculate, if you have something formatted as text and you put in an equation, if I do equals 1 plus 1, it doesn't calculate it. And it doesn't tell you there's any reason it didn't calculate it, it just doesn't calculate it. Uh, you might think there's a space at the beginning. That's usually what it is, honestly. So you go and you look, oh, no space. Okay, great. Um, the fix for that is that you come in here and you format cells and you just go back to general, except look, it still didn't do it. It still won't, okay, calculate. After I went back up and hit enter on it, it finally did recalculate. Um, so if you have a cell that you type in an equation and it just doesn't calculate, it's probably set to a text format. If you have a cell where you really don't want it to calculate, set it to a text format. Okay, now we have some other things out here, custom formats. Um, there's a lot you can do with custom formats. And rather than spending the next couple hours talking about every setting, every parameter you can do for custom formats, I'm going to refer you to this web page. That's on the Microsoft site. And the way that it works, bring up the site here. Um, Excel allows you to pretty much set however you want to work things. You can do leading zeros, you can do trailing zeros, you can do rounding, you can do different colors based on parameters. Um, so here's all of the options that you have. Um, Under text and spacing, for example, you can pick different formatting that you stick in the middle of your numbers, and you can put these right in the middle. You can put them wherever you want. You have decimals and where decimals go, and what you do with dollar signs, and whether your decimal points, like you can align your decimal points here, even if the number of trailing digits doesn't match. You can align your, if you're working with the fractions thing, you can align your the divide the division sign so that those all line up correctly. Uh, we've got your currencies, your percentages, dates, times. We can do all kinds of things here. Um, so if there's not a default format that does what you need, you can probably get the format that you want by doing a custom format. Now let's take a look at what you need to do for that. So if we come in here, you get there the same way, format cells, custom, and here you see, fortunately, they give you a bunch of different examples here. So, you look at something like, oh, let's see what I want to pick here. This is going to give you month, day, 4-digit year, and no leading zeros. Okay. If for some reason you wanted a 3-digit year, you could actually put YYY instead of YYYY. Um, you can change how your hours, minutes, seconds work. You do tenths of seconds. You can do 10 thousandths of a second here. Uh, all of these things work. If you don't see one you like there, so I want leading zeros, and I think this is going to give me leading zeros. Dot. So I told it to give me leading zeros for up to 5 zeros, and I did 5 zeros for the decimal, which it subtracts one. It's weird, but um, so you see this one, because it actually had 6 digits, it gave me all of them. It didn't add zeros, but this one, because it only had 2 digits on the whole number part, it added the leading zeros to it, and it truncated, it rounded off the ends of the decimals. So you can do almost anything with these formats. Go in and play with them. And the thing to remember with formatting is you are not changing your data. So if you screw something up completely and it's just all wrong, just go back and select it, right click on it, go back to format cells, come up here to general, hit OK, and it takes it back to the default and you can start over. Uh, so that's about it for cell formatting. And remember, you've got all of your usual, um, left justify here, you've got right justify, you've got center, you've got bold, italics, font size, color, fill color, all that other stuff you have that changes sort of the background and look of the values. And this is how you actually change the values. So hopefully you learned something. Hopefully this is something you're going to be able to put to use. If you did learn anything, if you enjoyed the video, please do like the video and subscribe if you're not subscribed, and hit notify. That's how YouTube ends up figuring out this is a video that's worth watching, and it'll share it with more people. Also, I do have a Patreon channel at patreon.com/data analysis excellence. If you can help out there, that would be much appreciated. It'd help to keep the channel going as well. So, again, hope you learned something from this, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for stopping in.